Chapter 16. Alexander grabbed the ringing phone from the nightstand. It was barely 3 a.m, but he was wide awake, and sleep was useless. To my agent extraordinaire, webnovel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. No, Sinke said. Alexander dropped his hand on his head as he tried to place the voice. How did you get this number? Well, it wasn't easy, Sinke replied. He swished the drink in his hand and took a swallow of the harsh liquid. I finally found someone at Western Prep who told me that you were Margaret's protector. Alexander was still confused by the conversation, wondering if he was more tired than he first realized. Sinke smiled. You probably know her as Greta. Who is this? Alexander demanded more than asked. He swung his legs off the bed and was halfway to the door before he realized he had no idea where he was going. Who are you? Well, I'm not the one who kidnapped Margaret and the kids, so you can cease worrying about that, Sinke said with a laugh that showed his carefree attitude. Who are you? My name needs to remain a secret until I make sure that you and the kids' fathers aren't going to come storm my clan. Margaret would be very aided with me if I, or anyone in my clan, hurt her students' fathers. Stop calling her Margaret, Alexander ordered. Sinke raised an eyebrow at the order. That is her name. Where are you? Sinke avoided the question. He was going to hand out the information to Alexander just yet. He changed the subject. The person I talked to at Western Prep said that you were Marg. Her protector. Sinke avoided using Greta's name to appease the angry man on the phone. I am her protector, Alexander clarified. Now tell me where she is. And who you are. It's 3 a.m, Sinke pointed out. Margaret and the children are exhausted. Margaret only went to bed an hour ago. She can't be woken up to deal with 2 angry Lycan fathers or a pissed-off protector. But that's exactly what I am, Alexander said angrily. I am her protector. I am supposed to be with her. Tell me where you are and who you are right now. Sinke cover RIK. He dutifully said. I will tell you where my property is. However, since I'm assuming you'll be coming over immediately, you will follow the rules on my property. You will not wake Margaret or the children. And I know your reputation. To my agent extraordinaire, webnovel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. It's impressive. Don't get me wrong, but you will not engage any of my... I will abide by your rules. Alexander reluctantly agreed. Now tell me where your property is. Sinke hung up the phone after giving his address. Should we expect him tonight? Yorick asked as Sinke finished the last of his drink. Sinke let out a short laugh. I say we should expect him within the hour. Alexander was low. Yorick said in awe. That man has a reputation that has extended across the ocean. There are rumors that his clan is the most ruthless. No one has ever dared cross him or anyone in his clan. Well, he happens to be Margaret's protector. Protector? Yorick asked. Even for Lycans, isn't that a bit archaic? We haven't had a protector for a human in hundreds of years. Sinke shrugged a shoulder. I don't know what they are doing in America. I just know that Margaret isn't aware that she has a protector. How can you tell? She came here, Sinke explained. She came to me instead of going to him. And since I know Margaret, I know that she isn't going to follow the guidelines of a protector. And if Oslo is anything like his reputation, he isn't going to back down on his job as a protector. It's going to be World War III here. Who's going to win? You're accursed with a laugh. Sinke poured himself another drink. I really have no idea. Had it been anyone else besides Oslo, I would have put my money on Margaret. Now, he took a swallow of the alcohol. It's just going to be a great show. Do you want me to alert the other members? Tell the others that Alexander will be allowed on the property. They will not confront him. Sinke downed his second drink. Alexander is already going to be on edge since Margaret has sought help from another clan. I don't want him finding any other reason to attack someone in this clan. It will be taken care of, Yorick said. He headed for the front door, stopped, and turned back to Sinke. We're going to have 2 very angry fathers here. Yeah, I know. To my agent extraordinaire, webnovel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. In thinking that the biggest problem is going to come from Alexander, not from the fathers. Chapter 17. Greta looked in the mirror. She had thought that she looked bad before the shower, but now she looked worse, just cleaner. She had gotten the dried blood off her hair and off her body, but it just made the wound on her head stand out more drastically against her pale face. Basically, she looked worn. She was grateful for the clean clothes Sinke had provided her. The floor-length black skirt and the full, fitting, button, down grey shirt fit her perfectly, something that didn't surprise her. Sinke seemed to know too much about her. He always had. Gingerly she tried to do something with her wet hair, but it had taken all her strength to wash her hair, and that had been done using only one hand, while her other hand had held her ribs tightly. She decided to leave the wet locks lying down her back. It would be the easiest solution for her, since she didn't have the dexterity to wrap the bandages around her ribs. She settled for just holding her side to relieve the pain as best she could. The wound on her head had started bleeding again. Greta grabbed the beautiful white washcloth and pressed it against the wound. It was either ruin the washcloth or bloody her clothes and have to take another shower. The expense of the washcloth was worth escaping another painful shower. Moving slowly and quietly, Greta managed to check into the suite without waking her two students who were still sleeping like the dead. She didn't begrudge them the ability to sleep. They had been through more than any child should have to go through. They needed to sleep. Greta needed to contact their fathers. She was really looking forward to that. She took a deep breath to clear her mind, which only served to remind her of her still broken ribs that needed to be wrapped again. Miss Classen, Greta looked at the tall man who had previously been leaning against the wall outside her room. You can call me Greta. I'm assuming seeing Kate placed you here. You'll watch the kids. They're as safe here as anywhere. The man reassured her, flashing a brilliant smile that Greta had no idea had most men floundering. She left the now besotted man. She attempted to retrace her steps from last night to the main part of the house, but took 3 wrong turns before finding the right route. She wasn't sure if she was surprised to see that Sinke was awake already. When he turned around, she realized by looking at him that he hadn't been to sleep that night. Good morning, Sinke, Greta said softly as she shifted from one foot to another. You look exhausted. I had a visitor last night. Her face burned with embarrassment. Well, the children and I will be leaving today. I just want them to sleep a bit longer. You weren't the visitor I was talking about. Sinke reassured her. Just where do you think you and the children will be going? Alexander asked angrily after Sinke kept conversing with Greta. Greta spun around at the familiar voice. Mr. was low. You will call me Alex. Alexander ordered. His voice rose louder when he finally got a good look at Greta. What the hell happened to you? Hush, Greta said, putting her fingers to her lips to further drive home her order. The children are asleep. I don't want them waking up because you're screaming. So talk quieter. There is no need to shout. Sinke let out a laugh. To my agent extraordinaire, webnovel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You hurt me. I thought I was the only one you ordered it around. I thought I was special. What happened to your head? Greta ignored Alexander and spun around to face Sinke, who was now leaning against the mantel over the fireplace. Stop calling me Margaret. Sinke. Alexander growled low in his throat. Do not ignore me. Greta. When Greta spun around to face Alexander to let him have a piece of her mind, she dropped the arm around her ribs to use her hand to point at him. That left her ribs loose, which immediately made her breathing painful. Instead of giving the peace of mind that she had planned to give, Greta winced and gasped. Your hurt, Alexander observed. He hurried to her side with his mind already going through every possible danger that could have happened to Greta. Large hands were gentle when they took hold of Greta's shoulder. What happened? Greta. Sinke slowly pushed himself off the mantel and watched in fascination as Alexander handled Greta like a porcelain doll. He heightened his hearing and caught the sound of the rapid heartbeats. He expected that in Greta. It was Alexander's heart that surprised him. "K, I know what you're thinking," Alexander said when he caught the look on the other man's face. "Forget it. Your thoughts are wrong." K wiped the look off his face, but his thoughts were still running with what he had noticed. Greta was Alexander's mate. Americans. They were the only lichens that he knew of that found their mates in the human world. Alexander forgot about K. He took Greta's chin in his hand and tipped her face up. "Tell me what is wrong." "Several of her ribs are broken," K finally offered when Greta still had not said a word. "And her head?" Alexander asked, clearly implying that he thought K was responsible for that. Greta would have gained Alexander's attention by putting her hand on his arm, but both her hands were occupied at the moment. One still held the washcloth to her head, and the other was once more holding her ribs to allow her breath to come without pain. "I got into a fight with the floor. If you think this looks bad, you should see the floor. This is not a joking matter," Alexander scolded Greta. His voice was gruff, a contrast to his hands as he gently removed the washcloth from Greta's head. "Who hurt you? I don't want blood to get on my clothes," Greta whispered softly as she took the washcloth from Alexander and replaced it on her head. "Why don't you have a bandage?" Alexander didn't even wait for an answer before turning on K. "Why haven't you taken care of her?" K shrugged a shoulder. "She's not part of my clan, and I'm not her protector." K, Greta said, rolling her eyes. "Stop baiting Alexander." She looked at Alexander. "He did take care of it last night, but I needed to take a shower this morning, which meant I needed to take the bandages off. I couldn't replace the bandages myself. They'll take care of it. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nogan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm," K said, motioning to one of his members who had quietly appeared at Alexander's increased volume. He accepted the expansive first aid kit from the man and set it next to the table. "Sit on the table. I'll fix you up again. I will handle this," Alexander snapped. K held up his hands and took a step back. He smiled at Greta, further irritating Alexander on purpose. "I was just looking forwards to tying up your ribs again." Greta flushed bright red. She dropped her head instead of making eye contact with Alexander. Perhaps K should take care of it. "Mr. Waslow, I have told you several times to call me Alex." "Greta, now I'm ordering." Alexander took Greta's chin in his hand and tilted up her face. "You will call me Alex from now on. They'll call you Alexander." Greta agreed. "But I think K should take care of me. I am your protector," Alexander argued. "Yeah." Greta agreed with him in hopes to soothe his anger. "But K has already seen me without my shirt on. I prefer to keep that number down." Perhaps if her brain hadn't been so addled by the hit, she would have worded her excuse a bit differently. She wasn't sure what had happened. She had blinked, and in that time Alexander had not only left her side, but had reached Kai and pushed him against the wall. "Listen, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nogan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm," K managed to say despite the hand that wanted to squeeze the life out of his neck. "I had no idea you were her protector. Margaret didn't exactly fill me in on her life in the States." "Stop calling her Margaret." Greta smiled at Alexander's words. She had been telling K since she had first met him to stop calling her Margaret. He had never listened to her, but he may listen to Alexander. K looked over Alexander's shoulder. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nogan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "A little help here. You will stop," Alexander growled. Suddenly K realized how much trouble he was in when he felt the nails lengthening into his neck. He stared into Alexander's eyes, which had turned into solid black orbs. He might have pushed Alexander a bit too far. "She's a human," K whispered. "Your actions will end up putting her in danger." For a second Alexander didn't react. It wasn't until he felt Greta's hand on his shoulder that he controlled the lichen in him. He dropped Sinke and turned to face Greta. Sit down. Greta, I need to look at your head and your ribs. She sat down on the table once more. Don't order me around. Alexander. She didn't even give Alexander comprehend her statement before she was turning to Sinke and ordering him. You need to get a hold of the fathers and get them over here. Patrick and Isabella should wake up and have those here. Yes, Mum. Sinke agreed with a wink. Alexander bandaged Greta's head. He kept his face immovable at the sight of the wound that marred Greta's head. He wanted to kill the man that had dare hurt her. Are you mad at me? Greta asked quietly after she had tried to read his face without success. Yes. She was sure if she was expecting a different answer. I didn't kidnap the kids. I know. Then why are you mad at me? Because your ear hurt. I didn't do it to myself. You know. Alexander's rough fingers trailed down Greta's jawline until they rested under her chin. Softly, almost like a lever, he tilted her chin up so her eyes met his. I never should have let you come to Prague. You should have listened to me. And this wouldn't have happened. Greta shook her head, dislodging Alexander's hold on her. You dare to deny that? Greta? Alexander asked. Since he was really looking for an answer, he continued without giving her a chance to talk. If you hadn't been here, you wouldn't have a couple broken ribs and a gouge taken out of your head. And the students would have been taken and would have disappeared forever. Although he wanted to argue that they weren't her responsibility but their father's. And because of that, she should have never been there. He didn't say another word. Greta was right. Had she not been in Prague with the students, they would have disappeared forever. Tell me how you managed to get away with Patrick and Isabella. Sinke would have contacted their fathers by now. They should be here shortly. I'd prefer to wait until everyone is here. So I only have to tell the story once. It was something he would have preferred to wait with. But Greta made a valid point, and she already had gone for shades of white. Alexander was surprised that she was even still sitting up straight. Alexander let his fingers rest on the buttons on Greta's shirt. Let me bandage your ribs, he said as he started to unbutton the shirt. Then you'll see if Sinke has some pain medication around. Don't most people? Greta asked. She didn't really care what the answer was. She only wanted to have some conversation going on while Alexander bandaged her ribs. She wasn't comfortable with her shirt off, until Alexander's fingers grazed her skin. The soft pads of his fingers felt like silk on her skin. Greta shivered and then felt the heat creep up her body until her face had turned a shade of crimson. Suddenly she didn't want her shirt back on. She wanted the rest of her clothes off. That only made her heart race more, her face burn more, and her breathing more ragged. Is there something wrong? Greta? Alexander asked as he taped off the end of the bandage around her ribcage. He could hear the increased heartbeat, the elevated breathing, and the blood pressure skyrocket. He was surprised. Even though she was a human, she was his mate, and therefore would be as pulled to him as he was to her. Can I button my shirt now? She asked the question in place of a proper answer. Alexander gently moved Greta's hands away from her shirt. Since I'm the one who unbuttoned it, I think I should be the one to remedy that. He slowly fitted each button into the small hole. Sadly, he reached the top too quickly. He ran a thumb along her chin line. You should have never been hurt. I couldn't have agreed more. Greta whispered. She cleared her throat, wondering where all the moisture in her mouth went. The other two will be here in a couple minutes, Sinke said loudly as he came into the room. He was one for breaking up a couple of lovers, but he already had one clan leader. Till if he were to count Greta, and he had two more leaders coming. The stress level was going to be high. It was only going to increase once the men found out that their children were now under another leader. And the fact that it was a female leader would increase the stress to a level that Sinke was dreading. He would have to make sure his men were close enough to stop anyone. It was a balancing act, and Sinke was hoping he would make it to the other side safely. Chapter 18. Greta realized that she was the only one sitting. Sinke stood near the doorway where he had greeted both William and Edmund. Alexander had moved from Greta's side and stood near the fireplace, placing himself in the position to see everything in the room, and neither William nor Edmund had decided to sit. For a moment, Greta thought about rising to her feet, that the chair was so comfortable, and she had found the perfect position to sit where her ribs didn't burn with every shallow breath. Edmund broke the silence. "You have our children." Greta assumed the accusation was directed towards her, so she was very surprised to see Edmund staring at Sinke. Sinke has nothing. Edmund's glare at Greta was enough to stop her in mid-sentence. "You will not talk unless I ask you a direct question. Do you understand?" Surprisingly, the first word out of Greta's mouth was a yes-no. "I think, but since I was the one with your children and Sinke was the one who offered help after the fact, that I am the only one who has any right to talk in this room. Sinke is." William sought for the correct word, not aware that Greta now knew about lichens. "He is a man. You are a female. It was not your job to detect the children." She was starting to notice that her gender received the most notice and not in the usual way. "I was the female that was sent with the students. I was their chaperone," which, by the way, actually means one providing protection. She was ignored. Greta cowled and remembered the last time she was so thoroughly ignored as she was being at that time. Edmund and William would not look at her. The response which she thought had so perfectly explained the situation seemed to fall on deaf ears. Both men had directed their attention back to Sinke. "We want our children." Now William ordered without concern for the fact that he was talking to another leader on his own property. Sinke also ignored Greta. Soon she would be pulled into the conversation, but for now he would deal only with the men if that was what they preferred. "Yarek, my second in command, has gone to get them from Greta's sanctuary. She has a sanctuary here," Alexander asked, more angry than surprised. "I am her protector." "Not you. You weren't here," Sinke explained. "I could have denied Margaret and the children access to my place, but they seem to need help, especially with the news that Margaret was the kidnapper of the two children. If I had known that she had a protector, I would have handled it differently, but Margaret failed to mention that part." He flashed a smile in Greta's direction and then returned his focus towards Alexander. "Not that I grilled her on what she had been up to for the last several years." "Papa," Isabella shouted as soon as she saw Edmund. "You came for us." She threw herself into Edmund's arms and hugged her father. "I thought I was never going to see you again." Greta watched Patrick's reunion with his own father. Although it wasn't as vocal as Isabella's, she could tell that it was every bit as emotional. Men, she thought. She smiled to herself. Apparently lichen males reacted similarly to human males. "What happened, Patrick?" William asked. He had wanted to wait before asking his son the details, but found that he couldn't wait. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Needed actually, to know whom to kill for harming his child and a female from another clan." Patrick looked over his shoulder at Greta. The male lichen in him angered at the damage he saw on her, but his age prevented him from knowing how to handle it. "Are you okay, Miss Claassen?" Greta gently touched the side of her face. She could feel the swelling of her face and knew that it was going to be a very pretty color as the day went on. "They'll be fine. Patrick, take Isabella and find Yorick. Ensure C&K has something for you to eat." "You'll be fine?" Patrick asked. Knowing that he had asked the question of a male lichen leader, he would have been reprimanded for questioning his leader. Greta was a male. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." She wasn't even a lichen. She was aware of the rules and order that the lichens lived by. "I will explain everything to your father," she assured him. "You will stay here and explain for yourself." William corrected. "No son of mine will hide behind a woman for protection." Greta saw all the flush he'd up Patrick's cheeks. "He isn't hiding," she told William, using her no-nonsense teacher voice. "I will explain what happened." This time she ignored William and Edmund, who both looked ready to pummel her. She turned to the two kids who were on the edge of room. "Go now. Yarek, She addressed Simke as second in command. Please show them where they can eat. They'll come get them shortly. Her words were very diplomatic, but the meaning was the children were to leave and not come back until she gave them permission. Jarek, well aware that Greta had become the children's leader, didn't even wait for the other men to give their input. Before Alexander had showed up, Simke explained to Jarek that Greta would be given all the respect of any other leader, if not more. You dared to go against me, William shouted. His words echoed down the hall behind Patrick, who nearly turned back around. It was the quiet whispered words from Jarek that reminded him that he had to obey the order from his leader, no matter how his lichen nature fought against the order. Greta was at a disadvantage, and she knew it. William towered over her, and she didn't have the strength to stand up and take away some of that distance between them. Her heart skyrocketed when William took a step closer to her. Although each of the 4 men easily heard the heartbeat, no one made a move to stop William. He was a leader of a lichen clan, and as such he would have the control he would need when dealing with a human. Irritated that William chose to intimidate her with his sheer presence and with the other men for allowing it, Greta looked over William's shoulder towards Simke. A little help here. Had they been with 3 other humans in the room, Simke would have helped without question. It was the fact that not only did he have 3 male lichens there, but they were also leaders of their own clans that kept him from helping Greta. Going against lichen law wouldn't be tolerated. Because Greta's protector was in the room, Simke was not allowed to interfere. Simke crossed his arms over his chest and shrugged a shoulder. I am not your protector. She rolled her eyes. Alexander, get him away from me. She gave Alexander the order, but didn't even wait for Alexander to move. She glared at William, whose impassible face made her wonder where she got the false bravado from. What do you hope to get from intimidating me? The answers I'm looking for. William responded with intense anger. Ignoring the fact that Greta's protector was in the room, William grabbed Greta's arm and jerked her off the couch. She screamed in pain as the sudden movement had her ribs shooting pain through her body. Spots darts danced before her eyes. Each breath only increased the pain and brought tears to her eyes. Suddenly a rough pair of hands wrapped around her waist. You will never put your hands on Greta again, Alexander ordered William. If you ever dare to touch what is mine to protect, you will lose a hand. She hurt my son. She knows what happened. And if you aren't aware, the only one injured is Claassen. William took a long breath and forced his legendary calm to return. I want the information about what happened to my son. And my daughter, Edmund put in. I did everything. Greta couldn't say any more. Her right side felt as if someone had jabbed a knife in there and twisted it. She couldn't seem to catch her breath. Each breath only brought more and more pain. Alexander put his hand out to stop William or Edmund from coming closer. He tuned his hearing onto Greta's body. He cursed softly. When his glare turned towards William, his eyes had turned to solid black corpse. Her lung is punctuated. You should have never manhandled her like that. She's going to pass out, Simke pointed out. His words were no sooner said than Greta fainted. Simke was surprised to see Alexander swoop her into his arms and hold her close to his chest. Simke motioned to one of his men. Show Alexander to the room in the basement. Find whatever medical supplies he will need. While we wait for her to wake up, William said, we will talk to our children. No, Simke said. Margaret has specifically said that she will handle telling the facts of the night. I won't go against what she has ordered. They are our children, said Edmund. You are on dangerous ground here. Simke, we wait for Margaret. I remind you that you are on my property. My men will respond to any threat of danger to anyone in this clan or protected by this clan. She is a human. We wait, Simke ordered. He had possibly an hour before Greta was awake. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He was going to be able to stop William and Edmund from grilling her. That grilling was going to lead to the fact that Greta was now the leader of their children. What that was going to lead to Simke could only guess. Chapter 19. Greta woke up without pain. For the first time she could breathe without the constant pain that had riddled her body earlier. She opened her eyes and immediately recognized the men in the room but not the room itself. What happened? You had a collapsed lung, Alexander explained. I assume it happened when your ribs were fractured. He let his fingers trail through the ends of Greta's hair without anyone in the room noticing his action. It's fine now. Are you a doctor? Choosing to ignore the inevitable by not addressing either William or Edmund, Alexander smiled and shrugged a shoulder. Not exactly, but I can guarantee that you will be fine now. Where are the children? Upstairs, K replied, breaking into the private conversation between Greta and Alexander. They have not been talked to per your order. Greta visibly relaxed. You're sure they're okay? She smiled at her own question. Never mind. I forgot that your kind can hear super well. William and Edmund felt the hair on the back of their neck rise at the wording of Greta's statement. With suspended breath, they turned to Alexander, but the protector was looking at them. He was watching Greta. What did you say? Not as aware of how telling her statement was. Greta didn't focus on the second part, but rather on the first part. I just wanted to make sure that the children were still okay, but I guess I don't need to worry about it. Because why? Alexander asked, stressing the last word. A pit started to grow in Greta's stomach. She struggled to sit up, but Alexander's two strong hands pushed her back gently, but firmly, down on the pillow. Why don't you need to worry about it? Alexander asked again. Greta ignored the question. She looked over Alexander's shoulder at K. Are the children okay? You will cease ignoring me, ordered Alexander. He wrapped his hand around Greta's chin and forced her to look at him. Tell me what you meant. Get your hand off me. K could see the stubbornness in both Greta and Alexander. Neither were willing to back down. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Logan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The children are safe. Now Alt's question. I don't need your help. K. Alexander growled. K hid a smile. Actually, you do need it. Margaret isn't going to answer any questions if she thinks the children are in danger. I'm sure the clan that had Margaret and the children thought that intimidation and torture would work for them as well. But since all of the children are safe, we can assume that it didn't work for them. It won't work for you. Answer my question. It was still an order. But Alexander softened his usual tone. He knew what K said was the truth. Greta was a stubborn woman, and if he was in the current situation, he would have let a smile spring to his lips. The medication that was taking away Greta's pain also muddled her brain a bit. What was the question again? What did you mean when you said that we could hear the children? Greta managed to shrug her shoulder even though she was lying down. I didn't mean any offense by it. Alexander forced himself to take a deep breath. That is not the answer to my question. I didn't ask what you did not mean but rather what you did mean. Indignant at being treated like a child, Greta retorted quickly. What does it matter? Answer the question. Alexander whispered to keep the urgency out of his voice. You're lycans. You're supposed to be able to hear better than humans. Aside from K, who was already aware of the knowledge that Greta had. The men in the room were too astonished when they heard Greta use the name of their kind that they didn't have an immediate reaction, not having to deal with astonishment. K was the first to react. There's no. Barely able to keep the smile off his face. It was about time the lichens in America had something difficult to deal with. The lichens that stayed in the home country dealt with the legends that swirled around their kind. American lichens didn't have that problem. Alexander spun around. What else can there possibly be? She knows about us. Isn't that enough? That is a death sentence for a human. What were you thinking? K held up his hands in the air. I was the one who told her. Who told you about us? William demanded. He stood over Greta. He let his face harden and his eyes burn the classic lichen black. He was mad. Although he didn't have the reputation that Alexander had. He was a clan leader and was very capable of showing anger that had every member of his clan ready to obey immediately. It worked even better on humans. Well, every human except for Greta. Greta didn't even acknowledge William. Instead, she looked over William's shoulder at Kay. Stop talking. This is mine to tell. You will not ignore me, William demanded. He was a leader of his own clan. He deserved respect and was going to demand it from Greta. Grabbing Greta, he pulled her from the bed and tossed her against the wall. Her frail human body would have fallen to the ground, but William had moved with such speed that he was able to catch her before she slid down the wall. Wrapping his hand around Greta's neck, he lifted her off the ground. You'll tell me everything I want. I told you not to touch her, Alexander said quietly. He grabbed hold of William's arm and squeezed it. Not being gentle at all. The bone snapped under the pressure. He caught Greta with his free hand as she fell down from where William had been holding her up. Using all his strength, he threw William across the room, slamming his hard male body into the unyielding rock wall. He turned to glare at Kay. You will stop, Edmund. Kay laid a hand on Edmund's shoulder, who had just begun to react to William's and Alexander's actions. You will not move, Kay ordered. Get your hands off her. The order came from the open door leading to the hallway. Patrick and Isabella stood in the door. Ever the male of the clan, Patrick stood in front of Isabella, willing and ready to protect her from any danger in the room. His order came a fraction of a second before he shifted from his human body into his lichen form and flew at Alexander. Despite the speed at which lichens could move, the next few seconds seemed to take minutes. Patrick, knowing his human body would be useless in an attack against a full-grown lichen, shifted mid-air to his lichen form. His intent was to attack Alexander, the one who held Patrick's damaged leader. He never made it. In the air, he was tackled by another lichen who had taken the same form as Patrick. It was a form Patrick had seen before and was well used to. It was William. William knocked his son out of the air. In the middle of his attack on Alexander, he forced the boy to the ground and stood over him. His chest was heaving, not from exertion, but from how close his son came to getting killed by Alexander. Reputation alone told stories of the ruthlessness of Alexander. Child or not, a boy in lichen form who attempted to attack Alexander would not walk away unscathed. Although William wouldn't have thought twice about attacking Alexander, he was about to let his son do that same foolish thing. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Patrick, William ordered. Only a second passed, but it was all William needed to know that Patrick was planning on obeying him. Patrick, I am your leader, and I am ordering you to change back. You're not my leader. Patrick shot back. He got to his feet, his body still in lichen form. Change back. Patrick, Greta ordered quietly as she struggled to focus through the haze of pain and veil of blood that ran into her eyes. Stop talking, Alexander ordered. Your hurt. Put her down. Patrick ordered Alexander as soon as he moved around his father's formidable form. Alexander immediately shifted from his human form into his lichen form. Although the nails on his hands were sharp enough to slice through paper without a hitch, he gently held the now dwarf Greta carefully in his arms. You will not order me. The room bristled with lichen energy. The constant shifting of males to their lichen form had the power of their kind palpable enough to cut with a knife. The room was silent, the energy between two male lichens hung in the now still air. Ordering Edmund to stay where he was without a word, Kay stepped in between the two lichens now facing off. Patrick had no chance attacking Alexander, but he wouldn't back down. Kay knew why. To Patrick, his leader seemed to be in a very dangerous situation. As part of Greta's clan, Patrick would give his life to protect his leader. Kay glared at Patrick. Your leader gave you an order. You'll change back. Without seeing if his order would be followed, Kay turned to face Alexander. You will not attack the boy. He is only trying to protect his leader. I am in no way harming or intending on harming William, Alexander pointed out. She is not Patrick's leader, Kay said. He spared Greta, who had gratefully passed out. One last look. She's a female. K glanced over his shoulder at Edmund. Female or not, human or not, she is the leader of not only Patrick, but also your daughter. She will not be harmed by anyone in this room, and Patrick is only trying to protect what is his to protect. She cannot be his leader, William stated, seeing K spun around, his eyes flashing black as he spoke. I do not lie. His deep lycan voice rang out through the room, startling Greta back to the land of the living. Seeing K. Greta's weak voice was easily heard in the now quiet room. I told you not to tell them. I was going to tell them. Seemed K smiled at her. You can't seem to stay awake long enough to do the job. His very words came true as Greta once more slumped against Alexander. Seemed K sighed. She needs to be looked again. Her ribs need to be checked in case they dislodged and punctured a lung. Her head needs to be bandaged to stop the loss of her blood. Once he was done giving orders to Alexander, he turned to Patrick, who had changed back to his human form, and Isabella. You two will go find Yarick. He will take you back to Miss Clarsen's sanctuary, where you will stay until your leader comes to get you. He didn't ask if either of the children understood his order. It was given and would be followed, if only because K was the leader of the clan whose property they were on. With that completed and the two children gone, he turned to the fathers. You two will not bother Greta while she is mending. She is the leader of your children, and I assure you that the process was completed in the right manner, and her leadership is binding. Once she is well enough, she will explain everything to the both of you, but neither of you will place your hands on her. Otherwise, I assure you, you will be suffering from more than a broken wrist bone. With the orders given, Kate cleared the room, leaving Alexander to take care of Greta. Chapter 20. Because Alexander was Greta's protector, it was he who took charge over the care of Greta. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Logan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. One of K's clan members was a doctor in the human world. Under Alexander's watchful eye, he examined Greta and pronounced that aside from massive bruising on her back, there would be no permanent damage from her toss into the stone wall. Her head had been bandaged again. It had her ribs. Once she healed through the normal chain of human healing, she would be whole and undamaged. Save for the wound just above her hairline that would leave a scar. Isak gave her a shot to take away the pain and then a sleeping pill, which had knocked her out for the entire day, leaving the two fathers and Alexander without the story on how she, a human female, had managed to become a leader of Telican children. Greta now sat upright for the first time in a day and a half. She had refused to tell her story lying down and went against Alexander's that she stay in bed for another day. Now she was regretting her very decision. She sat in one of Kate's high-back, comfortable chairs in his grand room. Her body was resting entirely against the side since she had lost the strength to sit up on her own. Her strength had slowly slipped from her body as she related the story of how she had become Patrick and Isabella as leader. She had fielded all the questions from both Edmund and William, as well as a few from Alexander, most of which focused on the clan who had kidnapped them. I only know two of their names. Greta said for the third time. They called one of them Cal, and Joseph was the one at the convention center. Who was the leader? William asked. Greta attempted to shrug a shoulder, but thought better of the wasted movement. I'd guess Cal. Everyone listened to him. And you do not know where they held you? Edmund asked. He tried to phrase his demands as questions, knowing he had to give Greta the same respect as leader as he would any other leader, if only because K had demanded it for her. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I don't know where. She paused to catch her breath that was constantly stealing its way out of her lungs. I was trying to find a way to get back to the house. I just needed to get the children away. You were in the right. Kate complimented her. They are your clan members, and as their leader, it is your duty to keep them safe. Greta closed her eyes for a brief second before flashing them open again. She was too afraid that she was going to fall asleep. Well, now that you, she looked at William and Edmund, are here, You can once more take over as leaders for your children. I only did it to keep them safe. I couldn't think of anything else to do. It was Simke who spoke again. That's not how it works. In the Lycan world, clan members aren't allowed to transfer leadership for 6 months. You will have to be their leader for the next 6 months. This time Greta did waste the energy to shake her head. No, it's how it is done, Alexander said. It cannot be changed. For better or worse, you are part of the Lycan culture. Although you are human, Patrick and Isabella will follow Lycan law because they are Lycans. This means that they may not transfer leadership for 6 months. I think an exception can be made here, Greta said. All 4 men looked baffled at her statement. Alexander sighed and shook his head. Lycans don't make exceptions when it comes to the law. Then why am I not dead? Greta asked. Patrick said that giving me information about his kind would ensure my death and possibly his. Suddenly her face grew white with fear. Patrick won't be punished for telling me about your kind. Well, Alexander shook his head. You are Patrick's leader. You will decide whether he will be punished or not for telling our secret. Since you are Patrick's leader, you will also have an opinion on what fate the human should have for learning of the Lycan secret. So, Greta looked skeptical. I will get to decide whether I should have to die or not for knowing about Lycans. How many humans ever choose death? That doesn't seem like a very good law. No human has ever had this choice. Leaders of the Lycan may give their opinions to Nick, who will be the one to make the final decision. Since you are the leader, you are the one to give your opinion to him. Greta rubbed her forehead as she tried to sift through all the information being thrown at her. I can't handle this right now. I'm too tired to process everything. She needs to stay in the room, William said, shifting from English to Russian. To my agent extraordinaire, Myelin Nobel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Simke asked in surprise at the changed language. You're going to speak Russian in front of her. She speaks Czech. How difficult do you think it was for her to learn Russian? Well, William threw his hands in the air. What language doesn't she speak? Simke shrugged a shoulder. I have no idea. Why do I have to stay in the room? Greta asked Simke. Instead of answering Greta, Simke pointed to Alexander. As long as your protector is in the room. To my agent extraordinaire, Myelin Nobel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You may not ask questions of me. She is not my protector, Greta insisted. She steadfastly refused to even acknowledge Alexander due to the fact that her silly stomach seemed to do flips every time her eyes came in contact with the handsome man. Just thinking about him made her flush with heat. Alexander, very much aware of how Greta was reacting to him, did nothing to ease her concerns. He didn't take well to being ignored, and Greta seemed to have succeeded quite well in thoroughly ignoring him. Instead of forcing Greta to look at him, something he was afraid of doing, he looked at the 3 men in the room. I want some time alone with Greta. Leave. We have the right. Alexander interrupted Edmund. I won't be talking about your children. He didn't explain any further what his conversation was going to be. He simply waited for the room to clear. He was surprised to see that Simke was as willing as William and Edmund to leave the room. Simke, Greta is my responsibility. Leave? If Simke leaves, then I'm leaving. Too, Greta responded hotly. Alexander gave a short, small laugh. You'll find that harder to do than you think. Are you going to stop me? Greta asked, her surprise and doubt easily written with each word in her question. Your own body will stop you. But if you weren't in the pain that you are in, then yes, I would stop you, Alexander assured her. Turning to Simke, who had still not left the room, Alexander started talking again. This may be your clan, Simke, but Greta is mine. You will leave the room because I demand it. Keeping the smile off his face, Simke turned to leave the room. He had known Greta since she was 17. Back then she had been a stubborn teenager who refused to listen to any order given by anyone, even if the order was for her benefit. Apparently the only thing that changed with Greta was her age. Because she was as stubborn as she had been that first day Sinke had run into her. Sinke didn't need to glance over his shoulder to confirm that Greta was indeed getting up and ready to leave the room. He knew Greta, despite the pain running through her body, wouldn't stay in the room with Alexander. Not after he ordered her to. Unfortunately for her, Alexander was going to let her leave. It was like watching an unstoppable object slam into an unmovable wall. Alexander turned and faced Greta. He didn't make a move towards her, although his heart urged his body to help the pain-stricken woman. Greta would have refused his help and gotten hurt in the process. It would be better if Greta accepted the situation she was in on her own. Leaning against the wall, Alexander crossed his massive arms across his chest. "Sit down. Greta, you are in too much pain. Don't tell me what to do," Greta said in reply. She could feel the heat sear through her body as the pain from her back, ribs, and head seemed to collide with each other. She ignored it. She had told Alexander she was going to stay in the room if he sent Sinke out, and now she was going to make sure that Alexander knew she was lying. Alexander's voice was quiet yet hard. "I am your protector, Greta. It is my job to tell you what to do. Let me guess." Her voice dripped with sarcasm. "It's my job to listen to you." He ignored the sarcasm. "Yes, now sit." She did sit. It was because he told it. She sat. Because that is what someone would do if another, bigger someone, picked the person up and bodily sat them on the couch. Fire was in her eyes when she glared at the man who was now hunkering down on his heels in front of her. Alexander smiled at the fire that shot at him from the pale blue eyes. No one had ever dared to hold any anger against him, and the few that attempted such a feat didn't live long enough to meet Alexander's gaze. "Greta, I'm going to explain something to you that Western Prep obviously should have before you started working there. I am your protector. My orders are to be followed immediately because I give them for your protection and safety. You do not have a say in my orders. Do you understand?" Now that she was sitting, Greta found that the pain seeped out of her brain allowed her to think more clearly. The thought of that irritated her because it seemed to only cement what Alexander had been saying, but she wisely didn't let on to that. Instead, she focused on Alexander's insistence on him being her protector. Greta laid her hand on the side of Alexander's face to get his attention, but quickly removed her hand when her body started to react to the touch of their skins. "Look, Mr. was low. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." He interrupted. "Mr. was low," Greta said more loudly, insisting on keeping their relationship extremely professional. "I don't want or need a protector. Western Prep shouldn't have asked you without clearing it with me, since I would have said no. That is what we will go with. Thank you for everything you did. But I don't need a protector. You will call me Alex." Greta's eye was filled with anger. "That is all you got from that? Call me Alex, and you'll address the rest. I'm not going to call you Alex." "You are." She was going to blame it on the fact that he was a parent of one of the students. But he wasn't. "We are going to have a very professional relationship. That is it." Mr. was low. To prove to Greta just how unprofessional their relationship was going to be, Alexander slipped his fingers around Greta's chin and ran his thumb over her bottom lip. He wasn't at all disappointed with Greta's reaction to him. Although she was stubborn enough to not allow a single outward sign of her emotions filtered to the surface, Alexander could hear the rapidly beating heart and the increased pressure of her blood. "You will call me Alex. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Greta's voice came out in a heavy whisper. She cleared her throat and tried to get control of her mind, and immediately corrected her mistake. "Mr. was low. Thank you for the suggestion. This is not a suggestion. This is an order, one that will be followed." The familiar bucking of any order given to her took over Greta's body, squelching the attraction that seemed to pull her to Alexander. She didn't wait for an answer, because she was sure she didn't want one. She focused back on the point she had been trying to make. "Forget your name for right now. Because once I can get you to understand that I don't need a protector, your name won't matter. We will not have any more contact with each other. She refused to wonder why her heart hurt just thinking about never seeing Alexander again. Call me Alex. It was the tenacity that beat Greta. She sighed heavily and angrily. To my agent extraordinaire, Mylan Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I don't need a protector. It's too late anyway. When I needed protection, she let her voice trail off. She forced the tears away from her eyes and commanded her voice to stay strong. I provide protection for myself. I learned a long time ago that it is pointless to wait for someone else to come rescue you. You have to do it yourself. And I did. I got Patrick, Isabella, and myself away from those men. I dealt with Mr. Gets puncturing my lung and throwing me like a rag doll against the wall. I survived alone since I was a little kid, being dragged from city to city and school to school. I don't need you to come claim to be my protector now. Alexander's face was as set as if it had been chiseled from stone. I never should have allowed you to come to Prague. I was against it from the beginning because I was unable to follow you here. I allowed the board to sway my decision. It will not happen again. You are mine to protect. I will not fail again. Stood up, and once more leaned against the wall with his arms crossed over his chest. As for not needing a protector, you have no idea the mess you stepped into now that you are leader over Tilican children. You need a protector now more than ever. To my agent extraordinaire, Mylan Nilbe, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Greta asked in complete disbelief. Who is your protector then? Thinking that perhaps every leader of a Lycan clan had a protector, Alexander scoffed. I don't have a protector. Well, you're a leader. Why don't you have a protector? Because I am a leader, Alexander explained. I am a leader of the greatest clan of Lycans. I do not need a protector because I am the protector. There you have it, Greta replied. You're a leader and a leader. You're a protector in a protector. You don't need to have a protector. I don't need to have a protector. Alexander shook his head. Greta, I think somewhere along the line, you incorrectly assumed that you had some say in this. I was asked to be your protector when you agreed to work at Western Prep. No one asked me if I even wanted a protector. That should have been your first clue that you don't have a say in this. I am your protector. That's already been decided. Nothing you can say will change that. Because I am your protector, you'll do as I say, when I say it. Greta rubbed her forehead with her fingers. I don't want to talk about this anymore. My head hurts. My back hurts. My ribs hurt. My entire body is falling apart. He wasn't going to get his point across to Greta. He should have realized that. She was going to be too stressed and too much pain to focus on what he was telling her. He would simply get her back to the States and to his clan, and then he would deal with her, and what he was sure would be a full meltdown. Greta, Alexander said, pulling the blanket off the back of the couch. You can't leave the room, but you can lie down on the couch and rest. Since her right side was the least damaged, it didn't hurt to lie down. She welcomed the blanket and could feel exhaustion nearly take over her body. Why is everyone insistent on me staying in the room? William and Desmond want to know what will be happening with their children. Since you are their leader, you need to be there when the future is discussed. But I'm tired, Greta said, nearly asleep as it was. Alexander ran his fingers along Greta's hairline. The law says you have to be here, but it doesn't say you have to be awake. He shook his head when he noticed that Greta had already fallen asleep. He had wanted her to wait to talk with everyone, but Greta had insisted that she had been fine. As always, Alexander found that once again he had been right. Leaning down, Alexander kissed Greta, letting his lips feel the warmth of her skin for a brief moment. When he stood straight again, his face was once more a hard rock of anger. Greta really didn't have an idea the trouble she had brought upon herself when she became the leader of Tilican children. Females never became leaders because of the sheer danger of the job, and to add Greta's humanity on top of her femininity just meant that the target on her back was only larger and easier to hit. She's sleeping, Edmund asked as the previously 3 leaders who had been kicked out came back into the room. "She'll be for a while," Sinkai assured them. "I had a sock put a sleeping pill in her drink." Normally, in any other situation, Alexander would have expressed his disappointment in the way Sinkai had once more put himself in contact with Greta. But he didn't. It had already been decided that Isak, as a doctor for humans, would have the say in how Greta should be treated. And Alexander didn't mind the peace and quiet that came with Greta soundly sleeping on the couch. Edmund was the first to speak, and he didn't mince words. "Greta is going to be killed. Because of her human weakness, my daughter's life is at risk." William nodded his head in agreement with Edmund. "Neither Patrick nor Isabella is safe with Greta as their leader. Patrick won't let harm come to Greta. He will take on more than he can handle, and that will get him killed. He was willing to attack you." William's last words were shouted. "Greta will get both of these children killed. I won't allow Patrick to die because of this weak human." Alexander understood what William was saying. It was a male Lycan's job to not only protect his leader, but also the females in the clan. With Greta being both a human and a female, she was a weak link that Patrick would be programmed to protect. Her status as leader can't be contested for 6 months, which leaves dozens and dozens of rogues 6 months to get their hands on our children. Edmund said, "Those Lycans who captured our children the first time aren't going to quit. With a female as their leader, our children are easy pickings. I will have several of my men ask for Greta as leadership." "No," Alexander ordered. "You will not have your men in Greta's clan. The danger to her life will be too great. I know what your plan already is. You will order your men to ask for Greta's leadership and then have them kill her. Your men will attack and kill Greta just to release the children from her clan." Every Lycan knew that Lycan law stated that if a leader was killed by someone outside of the clan, the loyalty of the clan members automatically shifted to that of the second in command. Only a clan member or a mate of a clan member could kill a leader, severing the clan members from their loyalty to the clan by challenging others for the role of leader. "Yes," William admitted, "that is my plan. I would have Patrick kill her, but he is not even 14 yet. I thought perhaps he should be a bit older before taking a life. But this is the best plan. Greta is a human and a female. She never should have been leader over my child. She saved your child. Get," Sinkai reminded him. "She was beaten and bruised because she had become your child's leader. In case you don't know, is the only thing that saved both your children. There will be no more talk of killing Margaret. As for any of your men becoming part of her clan, in letting you know that you can forget about it. She won't accept any of your men. Our children will be fine." Alexander interrupted. "As Greta's protector, she and her clan will come to my property. For the next 6 months, the 3 of them will stay there. They will be safe and protected. At the end of 6 months, your children will be free to ask for your leadership over them. She won't stay on your property," Sinkai replied with a small laugh. "She and the children can stay here." Alexander glared at Sinkai. "I am her protector. Sinkai, I know that Greta seems to not understand exactly what that entails, but you certainly do. You will not go against what I order for Greta." Sinkai held up his hands in the classic sign of surrender. "Listen, Wislow, in not going against your position as protector, in just letting you know that Margaret isn't going to willingly go to your property, willingly or not, she will do as I say." Sinkai laughed, but it held no real mirth. "How well did that go for you the first time?" "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Margaret just won't blindly follow your orders, no matter what the Lycan culture says you are." Alexander hadn't lived hundreds of years and not learned about the human temperament. He knew how stubborn Greta was. He knew that if she didn't want to follow his orders, she simply wouldn't. But Alexander also knew that he had a trump card, and he wasn't afraid to play it. She has to Lycan children that she knows she cannot protect without help. She will come to my property. Sinkai realized that Alexander had a point there. Greta did take her responsibilities very seriously. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Milburn, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She had come to him for help after she had sworn she would never set foot in CMKS City, much less his house. So Greta would do as Alexander asked because she would never put Patrick and Isabella at risk. However, she would allow Alexander to run her life the way a protector would be able to if she had been a Lycan. She would follow Alexander's rules when they applied to the protection of Patrick and Isabella, but CMK knew she wouldn't be so willing to follow rules that applied to her protection. Once again, CMK found that he was wishing he could be a fly on the wall of Alexander's house just to witness the interaction between Alexander and Greta. It would surely make for a great show.